Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Moises Esparza. I'm the exhibitions manager for the San Diego Latino Film Festival. On behalf of everyone on staff, thank you so much for joining us during our virtual edition. It wraps tomorrow, September 27th. That's going to be 11 full days of Latino cinema. Thank you so much for all of your ongoing support and for being so understanding of our transition from being an in-person event to a virtual one. We planned on hosting all of our screenings back in March, but had to postpone the festival due to the coronavirus pandemic. But here we are now, innovating and making sure that our programming reaches you directly to your homes, where we hope you're staying safe. For today's Q&A, if you are watching via Eventive, feel free to chat your questions or comments for our student filmmakers. Or if you're watching on the San Diego Latino Film Festival YouTube or Facebook pages, you can also drop your comment there, and I'll make sure that our special guests receive them. We might be joined by more guests as the Q&A progresses, but for now, let's start with the two who are here in our waiting room. We have Samantha Del Rio. Hi, Samantha, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for unmuting yourself. Sorry, I should have told you before we started. And we have another guest. Hey, AJ, how's it going?
What's poppin'?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining us today. Samantha directed the film Hecho en Mexico, and AJ, you directed Brothers, correct?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. And AJ, where are you joining us from?
Oakland.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Samantha, you're in San Diego, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you both for joining me today for this special post-screening discussion following Youth Visions. I'll spend some time with each of you talking about your movies. So Samantha, why don't you tell us what Hecho en Mexico is about?
Hecho en Mexico is a film dedicated to the arts in Tijuana, Baja California. It was created in hopes of tearing down Hollywood stereotypes on Mexico.
And it's about a 7-minute documentary focusing on performing arts mostly, right? Do you want to elaborate a little bit more?
We talk about a guitarist. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm horrible with names, but he plays most of the music in our film. Karen, which is a choreographer, and we just get to see beautiful parts of Tijuana and different cultures and arts.
That's awesome. So how many trips did you make to Tijuana to make your documentary?
So we made it last summer. So last summer I was still living in Tijuana. I didn't move to San Diego till September. So we have a year living in San Diego so far. So I didn't really make my trips. I was just roaming around my city.
You were there. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were already in San Diego.
No,
got it. And then tell me about the editing process for the documentary. How much footage did you have? Was that intensive to cut it down to those 7 minutes? Were there things you wish you had included?
Yeah, for sure. I grew fond of editing. At the beginning, I just didn't really like it. It was tedious. I didn't feel like I was being productive. But after a while, with Riz and Frank helping me out and advising me, I was able to really narrow down my interviews, because most of my interviews were 10 minutes long, already way too long. So I had to cut them down to a minute or 2 minutes. But what's funny is that I filmed my documentary in order. So the very first shots are the very first things I filmed, and the very last ones are just sparked up. So it was easy, but also a little bit hard, just getting to know the program, because it was my first time creating a documentary.
Okay, so this platform lets us get comments and questions from people who are listening or watching. I threw one on screen a minute ago. Here's her first question, and both Samantha and AJ can definitely answer this. What suggestions do you have for other teen filmmakers who are maybe starting their first projects?
I would say that if you want to get into filmmaking, like maybe you have a short film or something and you want to work with like a crew, prepare for things to never go the way you expect it to go. Always be ready to like be in the moment, and whenever a problem comes up, don't let that like hold you down or like pull you back at all. Because when you're trying to film something and you have like a very specific thing in mind, everything will go wrong, and you'll just have to adapt and like collaborate. And what's that other C word? Yeah, you're just gonna have to like adapt to your situation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd also
Samantha,
say
what do you think?
talk about or film something that you're really passionate about or interested about. That's going to make it way easier, because if you're doing something you don't really like or something that you're about, then it's going to be harder for you to come up with shots and editing and all of that.
Thank you both for your answers. And then Samantha, so was this your first documentary, or have you made one before? Okay.
No, it was my first film documentary.
What have you learned on this first experience that you hope to elaborate upon in future projects?
I think I started liking holding a camera and filming. I mean, I've always done photography. Photography has been my thing. Filming and taking videos of people was just like not really my thing. So opening up this new experience let me see that when I like it too, maybe directing is also something that I want to get into, since it was everything we did, everything we filmed in Real Voices was made by the students. So I think that also gave us a perspective of what directing could look like. So it not only opened more doors for me, but also gave me new experiences.
Right. And I guess on the topic of positive representations of Tijuana, was there something about your own city that you discovered through the making of this documentary that surprised you?
How many people are connected between the arts? The person I filmed for the guitar part, he knew or was like in the arts with one of my cousins, which I didn't even know about. I didn't even know he existed before I started filming him. So how connected and how small our little world is, especially in the arts industries, and how we should have our backs and always be there for each other.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Samantha. I'm going to talk with AJ a little bit, but I'll introduce both of us, or all three of us, back into a conversation if questions come up, and then we'll continue the discussion. AJ, thank you so much for sharing Brothers with us, a narrative film. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about, give us a brief synopsis on the movie?
Basically, it's about this high school kid, kind of a loner, no friends, and he only has his twin brother who died in the womb. And so to help him cope with his loneliness, he has this friend, his twin brother. And but his brother is sort of like the opposite of what he is. So he's just trying to like figure out who he is on his own, but his brother's like a bad influence, and just like this whole psychological battle.
Right, and the film starts on a conversation. I think they're sitting in a park bench between the two brothers, and at this juncture, you presume that this brother is being personified as being alive. Tell me a little bit about the decision to introduce the characters via this conversation.
I kind of I don't really like it when introductions sort of come up really like obvious that it's an introduction, where they're trying to show you exactly who what one. I kind of wanted to just throw you in to what their life is like. And so in this conversation, they're just, talking about what it's like being this lonely, being kind of, I don't want to say shy, but just introverted people. And kind of the message is, or I don't know what to call it, but just kind of showing you that this is all that Charlie thinks about, you know, and in his mind, he turns it into just like, this is, yeah, no, we've always been lonely. Oh yeah, no, we've never had no one. But like, just trying to show you that this is all Charlie thinks about. He's always been alone. And this is like the thing holding him back always.
The feeling of loneliness is pretty palpable throughout your short. I wonder what inspired you to make such a touching film about what it's like to feel alone, particularly perhaps from a teenager's perspective?
Because I was alone as a teenager. Yeah, I feel like when you're making short films, you have to make it personal. You have to put yourself in the film somehow, and that way you get connected and grounded in your film, and it just makes the whole writing process so much easier.
Right. There's a scene, I think, I feel like it might have been a diner or restaurant where someone's trying to talk sense to our protagonist. Tell me about the development of that particular scene.
How do you mean? Like shooting or just in the film?
I guess it seemed to be maybe it adds a little bit more dimension to the narrative, to the story. You see some pushback from the protagonist is pushing back against what I'm assuming it's his friend, what his friend is telling him in terms of getting over it, essentially. I wonder, like, what can you just describe a little bit, like, what led to the creation of the scene?
So basically, from the outside, when someone's struggling with these things, like loneliness, anxiety, any type like that, from the outside, when you know that person, it's super obvious. Like, you can always see, and it's always like, I want you to get better. It's so easy. You can just make these tracks, but you have to understand that the person going through that has convinced themselves that the state that they're in is good, or it's beneficial, or it's normal in some way. And that's sort of what I was trying to, push through. It's just like the internal battle of trying to make yourself think that this is normal and this is good when people are just trying to help you.
Yeah, and then in maybe the scene prior to the last, a protagonist has an outburst of anger against someone who's driving a car. Do you think loneliness oftentimes manifests itself through anger? And maybe tell me a little bit about that particular creative decision.
It definitely can, not always, but more than anger, I feel like it's sort of resentment a bit. I feel like when you're struggling with intense loneliness, there's always a bit of resentment because you always have this idea that, I'm the weird one. I'm the one that's wrong, and everyone else, it's easy for them. It's normal for them. And so, that combined with anger of just not being able to communicate the way you want, it can, it builds up, and you can lash out at anyone without even realizing it.
I'm curious about the reaction from peers or individuals your age. This is for both of you. When they watch your film, what type of reaction have they been having? Is it relatable? Do they find it surprising? What has been the reaction from your age group about each respective project? AJ, if you want to start.
Well, I shot this film with the help of Youth Beat, and so that was the only place where I could really see where they displayed it, and I could see the reactions. And it was a lot of that. It was a lot of people feeling isolated, and I think everyone kind of does to some extent, And I think everyone thinks they're like special, It's like, oh no, you don't get it. It's different for me. There's something wrong with me specifically. And you have to understand that everyone is sort of the same, and we're all going through the same types of things. And so you have to address those problems when you see them flare up like that.
Thanks, AJ. Samantha, what about a reaction from individuals your age when they see your documentary?
Well, sorry for the noise outside. But I shared it mainly with my friends who were in the film or companies that helped me film the documentary. And I feel like a lot of people felt like special in a way because they didn't feel like they were being seen as gross or weird, or like it's a place where there are only poor people living there, you know, because once again, that's the stereotype that Hollywood has built, that Mexico is dirty and that it's just drugs and strippers and prostitutes. So I got a lot of love in response to the documentary because it felt seen in a way.
Thanks. AJ, you mentioned the program that helped you create this film. Can you tell us a little bit more about Youth Beats and its structure? Maybe Samantha, you can tell us about real stories too. AJ, if you want to start.
Yeah, Youth Beat is a great program. It takes kids from Oakland and it gives them the opportunity to learn about filmmaking, and that's something that you don't find a lot here, and it's something that's greatly needed, you know, in a place like this with little to no resources or, you know, attention to things like that. Everyone growing up here is already, like, all my friends are preparing to just go into construction or work right out of high school, you know, just get like a low paying job and just stick with that. Everyone here grows up expecting that to be like where they're going. And Youth Beat, it shows you that you really, with some help, of course, but there's a lot more out there, and you don't have to sacrifice what you want to do what you want.
Very cool. And is it a like, do you meet weekly or bi-weekly? Like, what's the frequency?
You meet twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays after school, and then they teach you the basics of filming, you know, cameras, all that, and then they give you projects to get you used to it. And it's a great community of people, all just encouraging each other to be, I think, real, you know, be genuine with what you're trying to create. It's just like a great accumulation of people.
And how many students are part of it, or at least during your session? How big were the crews? And yeah, maybe how big were the students participating, or the amount of numbers participating?
When I made Brothers, I was an advanced student, and of course, like, there are more people in the entry level class when they're doing it, and they, you know, fall off once you get up there. So when I was in advanced, the entire class was about maybe 10 to 20 kids, something like that. So we didn't have big crews. Everyone who you see on film also did something behind the scenes, because we all have to, you know, make up our parts. I think in total, my crew was maybe 5 to 6 people. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Samantha, do you want to tell us a little bit more about Real Stories?
Yeah, Real Voices.
Oh, Real Voices. Sorry, I keep saying Real Stories, but I mean Real Voices.
Yeah, it's all good. So Real Voices is a summer program. I did mine last year, so online it's probably very different for the students of 2020. But we would meet Tuesdays and Thursdays. It was a group of 11 or 12 of us. I'm not sure. And at the beginning, we would first learn how to use a camera, simple steps, because some of us, like I said, I had no experience in film. Others were much more advanced. But they would teach us how to use the camera, how to turn it on, how to turn it off, exposure, not exposure, and stuff like that. And they would also bring us mentors that would tell us about their experience in this field and how to go further in the field. And each one of us had our own personal mentors, which also helped us a lot with our own filmmaking process. And the first 2 weeks, we were learning to use the camera, and 2 thinking about what we wanted to focus on, because everybody was doing their own documentary. And so we all started brainstorming, and once we started filming, we would all come together as a group and critique each other's work. It was a beautiful environment. Everybody was really supportive and really nice, but also genuine when it came to our work, because everybody knew that we wanted to bring the best out of our film. So it was really nice. And Real Voices had still brought so many more opportunities. The program ended last July, at the end of July 2019, and yet we're still getting opportunities, which is amazing.
Awesome. Maybe speaking about each of your personal work, what are some inspiration points, whether it's media or literature or other documentaries? What are your sources of inspiration? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first. When I'm thinking about a film, like trying to get inspired or something, I think mostly I see it in my head. You know, I see the shots, I can see the actors, I can see the lines being delivered, and importantly, I want to enjoy what I see in my head. I want to make it something that you want to watch. What do I want to see on the screen? And so when I'm looking for inspiration, uh, you're immediately going to get inspired by everything you've seen before, regardless if you're looking for inspiration. But yeah, I think that mostly. How do I make this, entertaining? Whether it's supposed to be comedic or not comedic, entertaining. I just mean like that. I want to watch this. How do I make this something worth watching?
Nice, thank you, Samantha.
For me, I love change, and I feel like change is something that our society and our world needs, especially right now with the whole Black Lives Matter thing. But last year for me, my change was breaking down the stereotypes that Hollywood has perpetuated on Mexico and other Latin communities. So that was my main inspiration, creating a change. And also my friends, my families, and the arts.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry about calling your program Real Stories. There's actually people who submitted projects from Real Stories and Real Voices. So I got a little mixed up. Apologies to your program. I guess if interested in learning what sort of lessons you learned about making these films, what would you consider, I guess, the best part of the filmmaking process, and what's perhaps like the hardest? AJ?
Yeah. I think you said the most fun.
Well, the most enjoyable aspect of filmmaking, and maybe the most difficult aspect.
It's probably pre-production. I think is the easiest and most fun because it's just you and hopefully people you like working with and friends, and you're just bouncing ideas back, and you're just all together collectively making this film that you want on paper, and it's going great, right? Because there's nothing going wrong in production or anything like that, and you're just trying to make the best thing collectively. And the hardest thing has got to be production. And since I was director and my friends in the class were actors, I had to sort of like boss them around, which is always uncomfortable and hard. But that's always, that's got to be like the hardest thing. That part, that like weird shift of power part thing, and just everything going wrong because nothing ever goes the way you plan it.
Yeah, so a filmmaker yesterday described being a director as carrying the burden of the world perhaps on your shoulders, where everyone needs a little bit of your attention, and you feel like you're just so split up between your crew that it all seems very, very high stakes. Did you feel that pressure, AJ?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Because everyone, I also wrote it. So everything that had to do with the film, people were asking me, what about this? What about this? And I just felt weird, sort of like it's uncomfortable, because you're all just like the same friends, and they're all looking at you for like direction, sort of like looking up to you in a way. It's very uncomfortable, very weird, but it was thrilling. It was fun.
Thanks, AJ. What about you, Samantha? What's the most enjoyable aspect of the filmmaking process, and what's a challenge?
So the easiest aspect was probably filming with friends because it just made it fun and very enjoyable. And we had so many laughs, and there were so many fun little moments that I could put into the documentary, which I love. But the hardest part would probably have to be the editing. Like I said, I didn't really like it at the beginning until the very end. That's when I started to kind of like it. But for me, it was editing the B-roll and the interviews, because you had to cut down the interviews by a lot. Like I said, first it was 10 minutes, and then I had to cut it down to a minute or two. So in editing the interviews and the B-rolls was really, really hard because I am a perfectionist. So every little thing I wanted had to be perfect or on key with the music, stuff like that. But in the end, I was proud of it. Still kind of see little things that I would like to change. But yeah.
Thanks, Samantha. During these pandemic times, I think we've all had to make adjustments to our everyday life. As artists, how have you expressed yourself creatively during these challenging moments? Have you been writing a lot? Have you been taking photos, or have you made another film? What are ways that you've adapted your creativity to go along with these challenging times? Samantha, or whoever wants to go first. Samantha.
Yeah. So I started taking pictures of myself in creative ways. So I started feeling like really low my self-confidence at the beginning. So my mom encouraged me to take headshots and creative ways to do it. And that was really, oh no.
You're freezing a little, but we can still hear you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And also, I founded La Mariposa Project, which is an organization aimed to promote, provide, and create educational resources for minorities. So whether that be sexual education on LGBTQ, or that be representation of women or women of color. So I created that organization in hopes of creating change, because education is the best way to success and for, once again, a better society.
Very cool. How about you, AJ?
Lucky for me, YouthBeat adapted their program for online classes, and it's been really fun. You know, they even sent out camera kits for kids to use at home, and they have Zoom classes. You know, so yeah, they help keep me creative. On my own, I don't really do much. Not a lot of some writing. You know, when I just feel something. Not a lot. I play music to myself, but nothing for like to express or like, you know, share.
Very cool. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to chat with me this afternoon. Thank you for submitting your projects and for giving us permission to screen them. Do each of you have any maybe parting words to leave for listeners and viewers? Maybe about anything you have coming up next, or just anything you'd want to share?
Just a small self-promo for La Mariposa Project.
What's the web? Do you have a website for it? I can throw it down on the lower third.
Instagram.
Okay, so what's the Instagram?
Yeah, it's an Instagram right now.
Is it La Mariposa or?
Project.
Mariposa.
Thank you.
Let me see if I get it right. That's great. Is that correct? La Mariposa Project? Cool.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and then how about you, AJ? Any parting words that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, sure. To anyone who wants to do anything creatively, and by that I mean from writing music to making films to stand-up comedy, anything like that, anything creative. If you get an idea like, oh, that'd be funny or that'd be cool to share, write it down. Write it down. You're gonna forget it. Write down every idea that you get. Keep it in your phone, on in a notebook, whatever. Write down everything, and who knows where that might lead later. But yeah, write it down.
That's amazing idea. That's an amazing tip. I have my little notebook with me at all times. Well, thank you, Samantha. Thank you, AJ, so much for joining us. Again, thanks for sharing your films with us, and much success to both of you on your future projects. Hopefully you submit them again to the San Diego Latino Film Festival, and we get to present them during an in-person screening, which is the ideal, method of exhibition. But again, thanks for joining us during these virtual times. Oh, hang on. We have one more comment coming in. Sorry. From Ligia Santillan Castellanos says, inspiring youth, and to everyone, congratulations on your work. Very cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll sign off now, but thanks again, okay?
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.